Do you struggle to tune into the awareness, to experience the messages and divinity that is in you, around you, and through you? Well, I have about 50 years of experience that I would like to try and condense into something that you may find helpful in connecting with the awareness that you are. So stick around and we'll walk through this together. Hi everybody, thanks for joining me on the Light Journal podcast. I'm Jamie Perez. Today I want to talk about something that I'm calling the AEIOU of tuning into awareness. Since the age of about 9 years old, I have been tuning into the awareness, although I can't really say I always understood exactly what I was doing, but as I look back now, I understand it so much better, as we do when we look into the lens of the past. We often recognize things that we missed at the time. Well, during my Christian years, from the age of about 9 to 40 years old, I would hyper-focus on the scriptures. And I would hyper-focus to such an extent that I would actually enter into an alternate state of consciousness. Although I didn't recognize what was happening at the time. I do now. I've also, throughout my life, found that nature is really beneficial for me. It serves like a catalyst to get me into a meditative state, which allows me then to communicate with spirit. I've also found that exercise works really well for me, especially walking. If you've been following me on the Light Journal on Facebook, then you'll notice that a lot of the insights that I share come from when I am walking my dog. Alternatively, you'll find that a lot of the other ones are when I am done driving to work, and I'll sit in my car right before I go into work and I will record a message that came to me while I was driving my car in the morning. So these are just a few of the things that I have found as ways that assist, but I'd really like to get into the AEIOU of tuning into the awareness. The first thing I've begun to recognize that I do is that I tend to first evaluate my attitude, which is the A. I have to see, how am I feeling that way? Do I feel like I'm separated from the divinity that is within me? Do I feel like I am unworthy? Do I feel dirty? Do I feel in any way, shape, or form undeserving of communication with the divine? This is a big one, and I don't think a lot of times we recognize that's how we're feeling because we've learned to tune out our feelings of inadequacy. But this attitude will affect whether or not you're successful in really tuning into the awareness. When I'm feeling particularly unworthy, there are several different things that I can do. First off, I recognize it's only a feeling. It's not reality, it's just how I am feeling about myself. It's a reflection of my own beliefs judging me. Okay, this is not awareness judging me, it's me judging me. It's that physical part of me that is making me feel separate from the divine and unworthy of communication. And if normally I can get through that pretty quickly just by recognizing what it is, that it's not truth, it's just an illusion. But if I'm struggling because I really don't feel like I'm deserving of that communication with the divine, one of the things I'll do is I'll go outside, especially if the sun is out, and I'll do a chakra meditation, or I'll do a really quick sun cleansing. And all that is I will actually face the sun. I will feel the light of the sun on my skin. I will feel the heat And when I do, it's like I said, nature is really powerful for me. So when I'm feeling that, I begin to actually connect with the energy that's coming from the sun into me. And I'll talk to the sun and I will say, Grandfather Sun, cleanse and purify me of all the negative feelings and emotions that are preventing me from tuning into the awareness. A lot of time that's enough. If it's nighttime, I may do that with Grandmother Moon. I'll go outside and I'll just look at the moon. I'll feel the coolness that comes off of her, and I'll feel the night air. And it's just such a soothing, loving experience. I'll call out to Grandmother Moon and ask her to soothe away the feelings that are preventing me from connecting with who and what I truly am. And both of those work extremely well. Lastly, if neither the sun nor the moon is available to you because of the weather, another thing that you can do is you can actually ground into the soil. You can put your feet into the ground and talk to Mother Earth herself. And you can visualize the feelings and illusions that are bothering you. You can just visualize them flowing out of your body and into the ground. All of these work exceptionally well. There are other techniques that I use depending on where I am or what I'm doing, but that can hold off for another day. Those just give you some ways that you can quickly cleanse away that attitude of unworthiness, of being undeserving of interaction with the divine. And that is really, really important as a whole. Another question you need to ask yourself is, do you believe that you can or will tune into the awareness? If you don't believe this, then it's not going to happen, because your beliefs manifest your reality. So if you don't believe it's going to happen, it's not going to happen. You need to trust. You need to just settle into the belief that the divinity is who you are. You are the awareness. The awareness is flowing through everything. Just settle into it the same way you would settle into a really comfortable couch. Just allow that to flow into you, and that will really help as well. So then the E is the second phase, and this is, you should evaluate your expectations. What do you really expect to happen from your meditation or your tuning into awareness? If you're coming into it with the expectation you're going to hear a voice and words, I'm going to have to disillusion you of that. That sometimes does happen, but typically that is later on in the process, as your brain has begun to learn how to translate symbols into words, and then it's your own brain doing that translation process. Prior to that, language is a very limiting and constraining way of communicating. We don't tend to see it that way, but try to explain something that you've never seen before or experienced before. Just envision trying to explain something that you have no words for. And it becomes extremely difficult, not only to understand what you're seeing, but how to apply it and do something with it. And that's the problem with language. And so when spirit communicates with you, when the awareness is flowing in and through you, it uses a form of communication that bypasses language. It uses symbols. It uses iconography. It uses feelings and sensations, okay? So when you get a symbol, it can be something that you don't really understand at first, because the symbols typically have multiple layers of meaning all combined into one image. So when you're seeing something, if you're actually seeing something visually, you need to pay attention to the details of what you're seeing. It's the details that communicate the multiple layers of meaning. If you hear something, you may hear a song in your head, you may hear a sound, you may also feel something with your body, or just sense something. And sometimes it's just this sense of knowing that just flows over you. It's like, you know. But the thing of it is, because this isn't in the form of words, words are how we capture and hang on to something so that we can remember it and use it later. So when you have things in the form of symbols and iconography and sensations and feelings, those slip away from our consciousness very, very quickly. So even though you may get a message, you may forget it as soon as you understand it, unless you immediately write it down on something. So I highly recommend that's what you do. I suggest that you always have pen and paper on hand. Just put it on your lap so that when you're meditating or when something comes to you, immediately write down, if nothing else, just the symbolism or what you felt or saw or heard. Just write it down really quickly, because you don't have the words for it. You have to just describe it. And then after the meditation or session is over, then you can go back and with other tools and other questioning of spirit, you can then begin to unravel what that particular message was. So that's another one I really want you to think about, is to have some means on hand for recording the message. One of the things I do when I go out into the field and I'm walking my dog, and I want to be sure that I capture whatever messages I'm giving, because like I said, they don't always come in words. Sometimes it just comes in the sense of knowing. I have actually my phone on record, and I will record the messages. As soon as they come into my head, they're going out of my mouth and onto my iPhone so that I can remember them later, because the language of spirit makes it very difficult to hang on to for long periods of time. So you have to record it almost as soon as you get the message, and then you can spend time interpreting it and working with that message later to expand on and understand the depth and the depth of the actual message. Okay, so handle your expectations. Don't expect it to come in the form of words and language as you know it. It comes through symbols and iconography and visions and sensations and feelings. Another thing is to handle your expectations, because an expectation creates boundaries. These boundaries are what you're saying. If you have a strong expectation, this is exactly what I want to happen and nothing else, okay? You set this, and this is what I expect to happen and nothing else. Well, like I said, the intentions, the attitude, the expectations, they all play into what you actually experience as a whole. So if you're putting these boundaries around your expectations, then that's going to prevent you from experiencing anything outside those expectations. And it may very well be that your expectations prevent you from getting the message or the information that you actually need to receive. So instead of putting firm expectations on, this is what I'm going to receive, this is what I expect to experience, give yourself more of an open attitude and more of a surrendered expectation to what's going to happen. Okay, so that's the E. So now we're going to work on the I. The third thing that you need to do is to set your intention. And this is when you identify what it is you would like to know or to experience. Now, saying what you would like to know or experience is not the same as saying, this is all I'm here to do. This is not the same as putting in this box of expectations. Instead, you're putting out into the awareness, this is the framework of information that I would like to receive, but I'm open to whatever it is that you actually want to teach me, okay? So don't see intention as a boundary line, but more of a foundation and a leaping off point for spirit to communicate with you. But it gives you an idea of why you are doing what you're doing, why it is you're meditating, why it is you want to tune into the awareness, right? And that intention really assists a lot of times in getting you the information that you want. I have on many occasions when I've done automatic writing, which is another form of tuning into the awareness, I will actually write a question at the top of the page. But then when I start going into the the automatic writing, sometimes it'll answer that question to the T and very succinctly. Other times, as I'm doing the automatic writing, I'll have 2, 3, 4 pages of information, and it has nothing to do with the question, but it's information that I needed. And it's because I leave myself open to whatever it is Spirit wants to tell me, and I don't always know what I need to know. And so by leaving that door open and just, giving, this is what I'd like to know, but this isn't all that I'm permitting myself to know, you're enhancing the opportunity of Spirit to communicate with you about things that you really do need to know, okay? So basically, just really be open to whatever messages, images, thoughts, feelings, scents, sounds that come through. And once again, like I said, always have that pen and paper handy, or maybe your iPhone handy, so that you can record whatever methodology that works for you to capture the response that you get as soon as you get it, so that the lack of words doesn't hinder you from remembering what it is that was shared with you, okay? Now we're on the O. We've done A, which was attitude. We did A, which is attitude. We did E for expectation, and we did I for intention. Now I'd like to work on O, which refers to opening all of your senses to and using whatever tools that you have available so as to understand and to interact with the divine. There are multiple different ways to do it. I've come up with 4 general categories that I use, and those categories include visualization techniques, such as visualizing yourself merging with the elementals of air, water, fire, minerals, ether. Okay, I use that technique when I want to flow with nature, when I want to merge with the sun, or feel myself in the soil, or float with the air, or float on the waters. These techniques are wonderful, very effective, but they're just one of many. Another thing you can do is use sounds or music. There's a lot of resources online for meditation music, but you can also use whatever sounds there are around you. Like, you can use traffic, you can use the sound of people, you can use the sounds of a busy location. Wherever you are, you can actually use the sounds that are present in that place as a tool for meditating. Going back to the resources, though, one of the ways in which I really began to understand meditation and journeying and tuning into awareness best is when I got into shamanism. And so the tool we used in shamanism was drums and rattles. And you will find online that they do have multiple resources for 15 and 30-minute drumming sessions that you may find helpful. Personally, as I continued to move along my journey, there came a point when I discovered that drumming wasn't the most effective way for me, but it was a wonderful experience. I'm so glad that I actually spent a couple years where I focused really heavily on using the drumming and rattling techniques, but I have found there are other techniques that for me actually work much better. But I want to totally acknowledge that this is a great way to go into meditation or journeying or tuning into the awareness. Also, there's another method that I enjoy using, and it's Hemisync. They have a lot of meditation music. That is, it's called brain balancing type music, and I have found it to be very effective in getting me into an altered state of consciousness and aware of the awareness. So I recommend them, but by no means consider those to be the only sounds or music. You could go outside and just listen to nature. I mean, that works just as easily as any of these other techniques. It's really a matter of trial and error. Find what sounds really work the best for you. It could be hearing a baby cooing. It could be the sound of farm animals. There are just so many things that could be exactly what you resonate with to put you into that altered state of consciousness and aware of the awareness. Also, one of the ways that I've used to open my senses is to actually focus on my body. For example, a lot of times when I'm meditating, I'll start getting intense ringing in my ears to the point where it's almost deafening. And one of the things I quickly realized is if I focus on that ringing, it is really effective for pulling me into a meditative state, for blocking out everything, for enabling me to really settle into the awareness. So if you get ringing in your ears, that's not a handicap. That actually could be something that is beneficial for you in your meditation. You can also focus on the beat of your heart. If you can sense it, or you can hear it or feel it, then you can actually use the heartbeat as a tool. It's really the same as the drumming, because drumming is meant to represent the heartbeat, but you could use your own body's heart as that tool for helping you to focus. And then of course there's more traditional breathing or in and out rhythm of air in your body. You can focus on that, the in, the out, the in, the out. These are all ways of entering into that altered state. I have used them all. They are all effective. It just depends on where I am at the moment, how I'm feeling, where I'm at. There's a lot of variables. So even if you find a method that works for you, don't limit yourself to just that, because you may find that in a different situation, a different technique works better. Okay? Also, lastly, open yourself up. You can open yourself up through visuals and sensations of things around you. For example, some people may get into that altered state and be able to sense the awareness that's flowing in through and around them through looking at a candle, or by feeling the bark on a tree, or holding crystals or rocks in their hands, or digging your hands into the soil and feeling the soil there. You can do it by just standing and allowing the sun to beat against you. I have entered into very deep healing meditative states by standing in front of the sun and just really focusing on the light and the heat of the sun on my body. And that's a very powerful way to go into a meditative state. I've also done that with the moon at night. I could just focus on that cool air, the light of the moon shining on me. That's particularly effective when there's a full moon, because the light from the moon is just so powerful. And I recommend any and all of those. I have used them all, and they have all opened up awareness for me when I was seeking to really tap in. So those are other methods for opening up. Now the last, the A, the E, the I, the O, and now we're on the U. The U is about understanding. Accurate interpretation takes practice. We're not used to talking so much in symbols and visions and just sensory things. We've actually learned to tune a lot of that type of communication out of our lives, and to try and integrate a brand new communication system into our thinking process. It takes time to understand that kind of communication, especially since, as I've told you, it's really a non-verbal, non-language based communication form. So one of the things I'd like to say for this is, when you get these messages, when you first start getting these messages and start writing down the symbols or the feelings, the sensations, or whatever it is that you're getting, when you first start writing them down, you may not understand it. You may look at that and go, I haven't got a clue. And if you're a more literally minded person, that creates an even bigger challenge for you. And if you are a literal-minded person and you don't do well with metaphors and symbology and iconography, if those are a real struggle for you, you may find it helpful to find somebody else to work with who is more attuned to that symbolic way of thinking. I know I have somebody in my life who is very literally minded, and she finds it very difficult to understand dreams or to understand visions because it is very symbolic based. But through working with her and sharing with her how I process through the symbology, she has actually become quite adept at understanding the symbology, and she's progressed amazingly. So even if you're a very literal minded person, don't give up on this. This is something you can do. You just need to find somebody else that is also desirous of tuning into awareness and work with them and bounce things back and forth between the two of you. And with practice, you too will develop a better understanding of how spirit communicates through symbols and iconography and visions and so on and so forth. Okay? One of the things that also encourage you to do, especially in the beginning when you're just getting used to receiving these messages and you're still filled with a lot of doubt as to whether or not you're accurately interpreting the messages, ask Spirit to validate your message. When I started getting divination messages, I really struggled to get the messages right. It's not that what Spirit gave me was wrong. It was that I was taking the imagery and just plucking pieces of it instead of seeing it as a whole, instead of recognizing that this piece of the message applied to that piece of the message, and really digging into the wholeness of the vision, of the iconography, of the symbolism. And to really understand a vision, you can't just take a piece. You need to take all the pieces and put it into the whole to understand what the message actually is. And that can be very challenging, especially if, as I've said before, you can quickly forget the pieces of what you saw because it's a non-verbal based form of communication. So writing down what you see in detail, describing what you see in detail is extremely helpful, because then at a later time you can start looking at every single detail of the vision. And it may not make any sense in the beginning. It may just look like a bunch of flashes of images. I've had those that I thought my mind was just going nuts because I'd see a flash, a flash, a flash, a flash. But then later on, because I had written down each one of those things that flashed in front of me, I was able to put all the flashes together and recognize that every flash represented a part of the message that was being given to me. And the best way to really tune into the awareness is just to trust everything that you see is a piece of the message and just to write it all down. And then you can take the time after you've done that entire experience, you can take the time afterwards to evaluate the whole thing. And at that point, if you want to be more critical of the message, if you want to be more questioning, that's the time to do it. But it's not the time to do it while you're receiving the images or while you're receiving the sensations. That's the time simply to let it come in and record. That's all you do. Let it in, record, let it in, record. And that's how you begin to develop a sense of what is awareness and what isn't. When you're interpreting the messages, you're going to get them wrong. And maybe a piece of it's right, and then another piece of it's wrong, another piece is right, another piece wrong, and then you're going to say, oh, I give up. I'm not getting it. No. What's happening is you have this filter that's filtering what Spirit is giving you. And that filter distorts and changes the message so that by the time it comes to you, a lot of times that message isn't quite right. There's something off on that message. And that filter happens when you go into a meditation with an attitude or with expectations or with intentions that are too narrow. These things act as filters. They change and distort the message that Spirit's giving to you. So if you want to receive a message that's accurate, you have to always be paying attention to your attitude, your expectations, and your intentions. And also, when you're writing it down, you need to pay attention to every piece of what you're writing down, every piece that you're seeing, feeling, hearing, and not just little teeny pieces of it, but all of that message. And with time and with practice, you'll begin to recognize when your own attitude, your own expectations, or too narrow intention is filtering and distorting the messages. And the more you practice working with your attitude, your expectations, and intentions, the clearer the messages become, until it really gets to the point that when you're hearing the message, it's almost as if it is words. This is how the process worked, at least for me. It's at the point now where when I am speaking to spirit, I get this knowing. That's how it works. I just know something. So I'll talk to spirit while I'm walking, and then I'll get this knowing, and I'll immediately record it on my device. And the reason it's almost like words is because I've learned to move past the attitude of being undeserving. I've learned to open up my expectations so that I'm not creating boundaries, right? I'm more surrendering those boundaries so that the spirit can just move right in. And also, I've set my intentions to always be open to whatever or however spirit communicates with me. So most of the time it's a knowing. Occasionally I've actually had communication through the cloud formations. I've had oh, goodness sakes, I've had communications when I'm working through my chakras with the sun. I've had communications when I'm working with the moon. I've experienced different forms of communication, but it's actually gotten to the point now where most of the time it's knowing. And I don't know if that's normal for everybody, but I know that was the progression for me. It started with me questioning everything I was hearing, questioning myself, disbelieving spirit, getting mad at spirit even because I felt like they were lying to me. It took me going through all of those stages to get to the point where I began to recognize the fault was never the awareness that's around me. The fault was my filters were changing the message and interfering with the accuracy of the message. And when I learned to recognize my value, the fact that I am awareness, and that everybody and everything is awareness, that we're all one and the same. And so a lot of those filters at that point just started to thin and dissipate. I don't always get the message right, but I'm at the point where I really do trust what I receive is accurate because of working on my own attitude, expectations, and intentions. So that's my experience. That's the knowledge that I have to share with you. There's a lot more I would like to talk with you about, maybe even share with you some of the meditations that I use and some of the affirmations that I have found most helpful. If that sort of thing would be interesting to you, if you think you'd benefit from that, please let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to join me on my Facebook page, The Light Journal, where I provide additional reels and content from messages that Spirit gives me. So blessings on your journey, everyone.